In a dense forest, a small drone was flying through the trees, taking pictures of the wildlife and landscapes below. As it soared through the air, it suddenly caught sight of a glint of metal in the distance. Curious, the drone flew closer to investigate. The strange objects were so large that the researchers could barely make a lap around them without getting tired. How was it possible that nobody had seen these before? How did these giant objects end up here in the middle of the forest? And who built them? They needed to get inside no matter what. There were so many questions to be answered, and they were learning nothing by just looking at the shiny exterior. They tried to not get ahead of themselves here, but they could not help but wildly speculate. Could this potentially be something from outer space? It was not easy, but when they finally made their way into one of the objects, all their questions would be answered in an instant. The world had to know about this. A decades-old secret will be made public to the world. But what was this secret? Before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Drones can be used for all sorts of things, but Dax had bought his drone for one purpose only. He had to figure out what was hiding in the forbidden part of the woods behind his house. No one had been in or out of the woods in at least 20 years. The woods hadn't always been a forbidden place. It was a blossoming part of their town for centuries, until it was closed off by the government. The people of the town protested against it, but nothing could be done. Dax's father even had to find another job because lumberjacks were no longer needed. This set back a big part of their town. Some people even moved because they didn't want to live next to some place where God knows what was happening. But Dax and his family stayed. He was only 5 when they closed the woods off, so he didn't notice much about it. But he had seen how it affected his family. That is why he started to save up money. He felt like it was his responsibility now to find out what was happening there. He wanted his family to be happy again and for the town to go back to its old glory. But he never thought about the consequences it could bring. He tried sneaking into the forest at first. He would wait until midnight and disguise himself in all black to try and walk past the guards. But he had to climb over a fence without being seen, and that wasn't easy. He had been taken into custody a few times, and his parents begged him to stop. But Dax didn't listen. He kept thinking of different ways to try and get inside the woods. One time he had made it past the guards, but he didn't know they were also patrolling inside the forest. So he was eventually caught before he could see anything suspicious. But he didn't give up. He had a beautiful plan in mind that would allow him to learn everything about the plot of land remotely. A drone would be the solution, so Dax started to save his ass off to be able to afford one. After 2 years, he finally saved plenty for a model that he considered of good enough quality. The next day, he bought it. He had to be very secretive about it, though. The guards could confiscate it if they knew about it, which would be way too costly. He did not even tell his parents about his plans, as he knew that they would try to stop him. Keeping it to himself was making him feel slightly lonely, though, so Dax decided to look for a partner in crime. There was a girl in town that Dax kind of knew because she lived close by. She apparently had the same interest and view regarding the forest territory as Dax had. At least that's what he heard. However, the young man was too nervous to talk to this girl until the day that he finally bought his state-of-the-art drone. Dax was on his way to the post office to finally pick up his drone when he saw the girl Jenny at the entrance. He greeted her, after which she asked what he was doing at the post office. He made a silly joke at first, but then said in a serious voice, "I can't tell you, not here at least." This sparked Jenny's interest. The girl decided to walk home with Dax, and after a bit more talking, he decided to propose for them to unbox his package together. As she learned that it concerned a drone, Dax began to tell her his secret scheme. Jenny got very exited, although her new friend did not tell her the whole plan yet. Jenny had to take off shortly, so they decided to meet up in the library the following day. It was no coincidence that they agreed to meet here, as Dax needed a map of the woods that his drone was about to fly over so that he knew where he was going. But, as it turned out, these specific maps had been moved to a restricted area. They had to somehow sneak in and steal a map, which was not an easy thing to do. Only with a certain card someone was allowed in this section, so they decided to be patient. After hours, a man finally showed up. Jenny saw the card sticking out of his back pocket and didn't hesitate to take action. She stood up and slowly walked over to the man. In a blink of an eye, she had snatched the card out of his pocket. It all happened so fast that Dax could not really follow what had happened, but when she returned with the card in her hand, he was very impressed. Together, they entered the restricted area. Would anyone notice them not being allowed here? Although they searched quickly, it took the two more than 10 minutes before Jenny had found the right map somewhere in a dark corner. Someone must have made an effort on purpose to make sure that this map was hard to find. Dax looked around to see if anyone could spot him in the corner, but the coast was clear. He rolled up the map and put it under his shirt swiftly. They walked out of the building towards his house as if nothing had happened. There, on the kitchen table, they laid it out and began writing down the coordinations. No one in town knew what was hiding the forest, so they did not really know where specifically to fly this drone. Still, Dax remembered a story his father always told him, in which he cut down a tree in the middle of the forest once, but there was something inside the tree no one could explain. Dax decided to draw a couple of red circles on the map indicating places that potentially could lead to interesting observations. Jenny was visibly excited. They drove around the edge of the forest to see if there was a spot where no guard stood. They would fly their drone over that part of the forest. Still, there were many things that could go wrong. For instance, once it would be spotted, guards may shot the drone out of the sky. Another concern Dax had was that he would lose contact with the drone or that it would crash somehow. If any of these things were to happen, he would have to start all over again. But Dax had thought it through. This drone was especially selected due to its long-range signal and because it hardly made a sound, so there was nothing that could stop him now from completing his mission. They drove to the edge of the forest and stood before the gate. Dax laid his drone on the ground and looked at Jenny. The drone started to make noises, and in an instant, it rose from the ground. Dax and Jenny looked at each other and back at the drone again. Both of them had big smiles on their faces as the drone shot up in the sky and disappeared over the tops of the trees. They realized that this was finally a real opportunity to find out the truth. Dax followed the drone on his camera screen. At first, he saw nothing but treetops, but then he saw something that filled up almost the whole screen. There were 2, maybe 3 gigantic objects laying amongst the trees. Dax took screenshots of the objects and sent them to a research lab. They were shocked to see those images but refused to tell Dax and Jenny what they were. But not long after their discovery, the government moved their project somewhere else and the forest was opened again.